Now these last two examples deal directly with FOIL and the conjugate. So let's just look at the first one and deal with FOIL. Remember that when I talk about FOIL, that's when we multiply the first times the outer and the inner and the last. So when we do that, the firsts, 2 times 3 is 6. The outers would be negative 4i. The inner is plus 3i. And the last is minus 2i squared. So what happens though when I have I squared? I squared is negative 1 times a negative 2, which means I now have positive 2. So we'll rewrite this just so we can follow along. So 6 minus 4i plus 3i plus 2. So I can combine the 2 and the 6 and I get 8. And negative 4i plus 3i is just negative I. So the answer when I FOIL these would be 8 minus I. So you have to follow along here. I squared is a negative 1 times a negative 2 is a positive 2. And that's how come I combined the first and the last terms there. The next time we apply that similar concept is over here on this one. Remember that if I multiply by the conjugate is this same number, only it's exactly the same except plus I. So if I multiplied the top and bottom by 2 plus I, then it's going to get rid of the I in the denominator by making a perfect square, it would be because I'm multiplying these two together. So if I multiply the top and the bottom by 2 plus I, the numerator is going to become negative 3 times a negative 2 is a negative 6. That's the first. The outer is minus 3i. The inner is plus 8i. And then the last is plus 4i squared. Now notice what happens to the denominator. We have the first terms, which would be 4. Then we have the outer term, which is a plus 2i, and the inner, which is a minus 2i. So plus 2i, minus 2i cancel each other out, and I'm left with minus I squared. So up here in the numerator, we still have a negative 6 minus 3i plus 8i, and then I squared is a negative 1 times a 4, which would be negative 4. In the denominator, I squared again, negative 1 times a negative would be a positive 1, so that would be 4 plus 1. So this thing is going to simplify to negative 6 minus 4, which would be negative 10. And then negative 3 plus 8i is positive 5i divided by 5. Now I can reduce this or simplify this fraction one more time. So here I have negative 2 plus I as the actual final solution. So remember that when I'm multiplying by a conjugate, the conjugate would be the same denominator, just opposite signs. So this is the same thing on both right here, except this is a minus and this is a plus. And that's multiplying using FOIL and the conjugate.